Across the world, people are grabbing what they can and running.
They were holding hands when they got washed away.
They aren't moving for fun, but being forced out by a crisis that's getting worse by the day.
Cuando repito una y otra vez que estamos comenzando el tiempo de la extinción humana, creo que no estoy diciendo una exageración.
And while millions are running for their lives, the powerful are doubling down on the very thing driving this chaos.
We're slashing unnecessary regulations that targeted the beautiful clean coal.
Trump's so-called Big Beautiful Bill is a knockout punch to the most ambitious clean energy plan the US has ever had.
This will directly translate into cost. There is a risk for the US to fall behind.
But falling behind isn't just a US problem. Thousands of kilometers away in the Amazon, Brazil's opened up oil and gas blocks for auction. Right along the coast of one of the most fragile ecosystems, and months before hosting the world's biggest climate summit.
In Brazil, in the coast of the Amazon region, is a very sensitive area, very special.
Just 2 degrees is on. Now.
We should not, in any case, go ahead with this kind of project.
We know why people flee war zones. But what happens when it's the planet chasing people away from their homes? Climate displacement is surging. And the world doesn't even yet know how to refer to people escaping environmental disasters, let alone how to protect them. Rallies in El Salvador are practically an annual occurrence. This one commemorates the 12-year civil war, where a US-backed military government fought leftist guerrillas between 1979 and 1992. More than 75,000 people were killed, and over 1 million, around 1 in 5 Salvadorans at the time, fled the violence, persecution, and forced military recruitment. It's one of countless historical examples of why people flee their homes.
Las víctimas del conflicto armado siguen esperando justicia, siguen esperando verdad, siguen esperando reparación.
Today, conflict and violence aren't the only reasons people are forced to run. In 2023 alone, weather-related disasters displaced nearly 10 million. A year and a whole lot of record-breaking weather later, the figure quintupled to nearly 46 million.
Cuando repito una y otra vez que estamos comenzando el tiempo de la extinción humana, creo que no estoy diciendo una exageración. No es una visión apocalíptica.
At times it sure does look like the end, especially when cyclones leave neighborhoods in countries like Philippines and Bangladesh unrecognizable, or when drought wipes out farmlands, the main way people earn money and feed their family in parts of Africa.
وهذا مهم عند الساكنة بالبقاء في بلدها ولا قد تبقى في بلدها ما جبرت حلول المشاكل.
So what exactly is climate displacement? Well, it's when people have no choice but to leave home because their environment turns hostile.
It was very scary.
Sometimes it's sudden, like a tornado tearing through the central United States.
When they say it roars, it roars.
Other times it's a slow rising sea, the loss of drinking water, or farmland drying up. Either way, it is a social and economic gut punch. Families lose nearly everything, and when they look for somewhere else safer, host regions may choose not to let them in. And what's worse, people fleeing climate disasters aren't even legally recognized as refugees under international law. That means millions get no asylum, no protections, and no legal status.
Migration is not a crime. Saving lives is not a crime.
This is where climate justice comes in. If those least responsible for the crisis are the ones made to pay the highest price, then justice demands more than sympathy. It demands recognition and protection. And one can only hope that for climate refugees, as was the case for people running away from conflict during El Salvador's civil war, those responsible for the suffering won't get away with it forever.
La tenacidad da sus frutos. La lucha contra la impunidad llevó mucho tiempo, pero se ganó.
However, there are examples of climate refugees being accepted into foreign countries. Take Tuvalu, for example, a low-lying island nation in the South Pacific that is literally disappearing into the sea. Tuvalu's coastline is basically crumbling, and stronger storms seem to be accelerating all of it. So, Australia sent its first-of-a-kind offer, a special visa, to help Tuvaluans before it's too late.
It's an emotional one, and it's not a fair situation from our end that we are facing the brutal impacts of this crisis that we contribute very little to. And what's endangered is our identity to our land, our identity as Tuvaluans, and the future of our children and our descendants. And that's very concerning.
It's a very hard decision to make because we have to leave our country. And to leave a country, we have to leave aside the culture that we were born with.
In Tuvalu, we are living the realities of climate change, sea level rise, as you stand watching me today at COP26. We cannot wait for speeches when the sea is rising around us all the time. Climate mobility must come to the forefront. We must take bold, alternative action today to secure tomorrow.
Let's talk a bit about US President Donald Trump's big, beautiful bill. Well, depending on who you ask, it'll either fix the country or make things worse. But here's a consensus on what the move means for the US's climate policies. Based on what we've gleaned from media there, the bill officially rolls back clean energy initiatives from the previous administration's Inflation Reduction Act, trimming solar, wind and electric vehicle tax credits after 2026. Instead, it boosts support for oil and gas projects and funnels billions of dollars into defense and border security. Renewable energy advocates say this could set the US back by decades.
The yeas are 218, the nays are 214. The motion is adopted.
Just like that, Donald Trump's big, beautiful bill was passed by just 4 votes. And with it, a major blow to the US's biggest clean energy plan in history, the Inflation Reduction Act.
I'm going to take my time and ensure that the American people fully understand how damaging this bill will be to their quality of life.
The bill cuts government support for clean energy, the kind that helps pay for solar panels, wind farms, and electric cars, After 2027, if a project hasn't already started, it's out of luck. No more funding. Instead, that money gets redirected back to oil, gas, and coal. There are even new tax breaks for coal used in steelmaking, and pollution limits are getting rolled back.
We are proposing to repeal Obama and Biden rules that have been criticized as regulating coal, oil, and gas out of existence. From the so-called Clean Power Plan to the 2024 Mercury and Air Toxic Standards, or MATS.
We're slashing unnecessary regulations that targeted the beautiful clean coal.
A new report says the bill could cost the U.S. up to 2.3 million clean energy jobs and push household energy bills up around $280 a year by the year 2035. And the environmental cost is massive. 7 billion extra tons of CO2 by 2050. That's as much as the current emissions of China and the entire European Union combined. Meanwhile, China is already on track to build nearly 1,000 gigawatts of clean energy by the end of the decade, enough to power the U.S. grid twice. Critics say the real winners here are big oil, coal, and gas companies, and the losers, ordinary families who pay more, breathe dirtier air, and miss out on a share of the booming green economy.
Thank you very much, everybody. Have a good
Ron,
time.
I'm really curious to get your first reaction about this big, beautiful bill.
Irresponsible, I guess, and very short-term sighted, and not acknowledging for the fact that it's very clear that we need to phase out fossil fuels because they are responsible for 75% of CO2 emissions, but also I think very unfair to the population and to the voters ultimately, because it is missing out on the opportunities renewable energy bring to basically not only create market opportunities, industrial opportunities, but also ultimately secure, resilient, and affordable energy and electricity for the citizens.
So if this big, beautiful bill pulls the rug out from under clean energy subsidies, do you see hidden pathways for renewables to still thrive? And is there any way to outsmart the federal rollback?
Copper demand is actually huge, it's growing, and it is also growing by economic sectors that are very clearly recognizing that renewable, sectors like the data centers, AI-based, that are facing today the reality of an increasing electricity demand, and where renewable energy is actually the least cost solution basically for the energy consumers. Los Angeles is facing or has been facing wildfires, where just recently, you see, during the last days, Texas is handling with the impacts of floods, where there is droughts in some regions. This will directly translate into cost for the governments, for the economy, for society.
The US likes to sell itself as a leader of innovation, but by gutting renewables, where does that leave it in the global clean energy race?
When you're looking basically at the global leaders, China alone accounts for over 60% of the installed capacities, is driving in terms of electric mobility development, solar photovoltaics development, in other renewable energy technologies, in batteries too. So where it is very clear that there is a risk for the US to fall behind basically those leaders who have understood that renewable energy is an opportunity for them to not only basically shift the energy system, but also basically develop economic opportunities, industrialization opportunities, trade opportunities in the countries.
So if you could pitch Donald Trump on renewables purely as an economic powerhouse, no climate talk at all, what argument do you think could actually change his mind?
Cost, cost, cost. That's one word. Over 90% of the new installed capacities, power generation capacities, are renewable based, and this is actually only because this is a least cost option, but also because it is an option that allows you to build up basically energy supply and like this energy security that is resilient to climate change. If the US is really serious about providing and ensuring energy security, then it is important to move to renewables. The last point is obviously the geopolitical situation. And when we see what is happening on the, if you like, on transport prices, on fuel prices, etc., because of the geopolitical tension, because of the dependence of few fossil fuel producing countries, or also travel routes on the logistics, this is actually very clearly another part. Renewables, also in the US, is an opportunity to basically ensure homegrown energy for energy security and to serve basically the economic and industrial energy consumers, but also obviously citizens.
To those who say solar and wind fail when nature doesn't cooperate and blame Europe's grid failures on too much reliance on renewables, what's your response? I mean, do gas and oil still make more economic sense, or does Trump have a point?
There is a massive misinformation, disinformation around it. Europe's recent blackout was not caused by renewable energy. The analysis by the transmission system operators, the governments, all players involved, very clearly show that the issue is not about the renewable side, but the fact that we don't have sufficiently well-developed grids that offer the flexibility and allow basically dynamics part. So no, fossil fuel is not a reliable solution. On the short term, market signals are wrong, but the reality is renewable can deliver, and there are already lots of countries that are close to 100% renewable electricity in their grids, including high shares of variable wind and solar.
All right, so what do we have next?
Just to Matter.
It's time for a Just to Matter, our segment that highlights the little things that make a huge difference. And this time, it's something so small you can't see it, but it's everywhere, with a big impact on the way we live. We breathe it out, trees breathe it in. It helps plants grow, puts the fizz in your soda, and even keeps the earth warm enough to live on. But too much of it, and that balance falls apart. Carbon dioxide, or CO2, is a gas made up of one carbon atom and two oxygen ones. It's been around since the very beginning. CO2 helped thaw a frozen earth, fed the first forests, and made life on Earth possible. We wouldn't be here without it. But in large amounts, this helpful gas turns dangerous. In an enclosed space, too much CO2 can mess with your breathing, your brain, and your blood circulation. That's why it's sometimes called a silent asphyxiant. Out in the open, in the atmosphere, CO2 acts like a heat trap. It lets sunlight in, but traps the heat trying to escape. More CO2 means a thicker heat blanket, and that means rising global temperatures. Every time we burn coal, oil or gas, we release more CO2, and right now there is more of it in our atmosphere than at any point in human history. That's why summers are getting hotter, droughts are lasting longer, glaciers are melting faster, and wildfires are burning stronger. CO2 helped build the world we know, but unless we stop releasing so much of it, it might also be what makes this planet unlivable. The world's biggest climate conference, COP30, is close, but Brazil, the host, is under some serious scrutiny for decisions that involve big names in the oil and gas industry at sites near the Amazon River.
Todos os lugares que fosse prejudicar os povos indígenas, o presidente Lula ia estar junto para proteger a gente. Na campanha dele ele usou muito isso aí, de marcação de terra contra exploramento de minérios e gás e de petróleo, tudo. Agora está leiloando, né, o petróleo ali. A gente veio, andamos acho que uns 2.000 quilômetros, sofremos para vir manifestar aqui em Rio de Janeiro.
So the Brazil government began auctioning off the exploration rights to 172 oil and gas blocks spanning an area twice the size of Ireland, Sri Lanka, Panama, the UAE. Dozens of indigenous communities and environmental groups have slammed it as a doomsday auction and a clear violation of Brazil's climate pledges. Why is Greenpeace so worried about these new oil blocks, especially the ones near the Amazon coast?
This area in Brazil, in the coast of the Amazon region, is a very sensitive area, very special and very particular in terms of biodiversity, in terms of culture and socio-biodiversity in general. So we've been trying to raise awareness about these conditions and why we should not move ahead with oil and gas exploitation and exploration in this region.
So the government says this is about money and that oil revenue will help Brazil grow and even protect the Amazon. Is that a fair point in your view?
Oil and gas money has been playing an important role in Brazil's development in this past decades. Of course, money is important, but I believe we are able to think of other ways of calling development in a way that is not is not dependent of oil and gas money.
Is there any version of this, Mariana, of offshore drilling you think could work? I mean, maybe with tighter regulations, oversight, proper studies?
So right now, we have enough evidence to say that it's not safe and it's not proper to go ahead with this kind of exploration. Of course, we need much more information to understand if there could be a way, but considering that we are in a context of climate change, of COP30, of climate negotiations, and then we need bold decisions from Brazil and from other countries as well, we should not, in any case, go ahead with this kind of project.
So there's talk of legal challenges now, mostly around a lack of proper environmental studies and failing to consult indigenous communities. What is Greenpeace planning on that front?
This is a topic that became very political in Brazil. So even though there is an agency saying, special agency saying that we don't have, to the evidences that we have, we cannot approve this license, is still being pressured for the politics here in Brazil to at least test, at least approve some kind of research for the national oil company. We as civil society are consulting these people in the region. We are performing some studies, and we are raising awareness in the society in Brazil in general to connect this idea of approving a licensing process for oil exploration in this region is like opening a new frontier for oil and gas and fossil fuels in general, which is not coherent with the Brazilian the Brazilian role as COP president this year. It is not coincidence with what we call energy transition that Brazil also has been mentioning in other forums like the BRICS forums and a few days ago, and other forums where Brazil is claiming to be investing in energy transition. This is not true, and it's not true that we can use an oil and gas money to sponsor energy transition. That is very common discourse here in Brazil, a very political and common discourse, and we as Greenpeace are paying a lot of attention on that and try to raise awareness about the incoherences in this process.
As far as I understand it, a lot of these blocks actually went unsold. Do you think that's a sign the oil industry is starting to back off? Or do you worry they'll just come back later when the media heat dies down?
Although we didn't sell, the company didn't sell the 100% of the blocks, 34 blocks being those 19 in this very sensitive area is very dangerous. We don't think that is something that we should ignore. And this movement of interest in this region, selling blocks in this region specifically, shows us that is, even though the companies are being careful with their movements here in Brazil, they are very much ambitious to this region itself.
And that's our show. We leave you with images out of the United States, where days of heavy rains in July caused the Guadalupe River in Texas to burst its banks. These time lapses show how fast the waters rose, which no one anticipated, and local media criticised the lack of early warning systems which could have prevented the deaths of scores of people. Nearly everything weather-related these days is so much more unpredictable now, and we are still so unprepared to face it.
Queremos hacernos la idea de que todo pasa por algo, todo pasa por algo. Hay cosas que no podemos cambiar.